Hey guys, so RFK Jr., the head of Health and Human Services, not a doctor, not an expert in public health, an environmental lawyer, has he did a press conference. And if there is a thesis to his press conference, a button, a summary of it, it is that we have increased cases of autism. The actual number of children with autism is increasing, and it's more than likely an environmental cause that is linked to the whole thing of just us living in an overall less healthy environment. And he's going to find the cause of it. It's an epidemic, it's a disease, and it is an environmental disease. That is the central thesis. Now, I want you to watch this clip. This is not the clip that, or the part of the press conference that everybody's focusing on. This is actually something he says early on. The thing that everybody's focusing on, he says later.
One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria. If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is beginning with the first one. Year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase. I want it because this epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously,
hey guys, so the press conference that RFK gave in regards to autism, it's one of those things where he says a thing which is so completely batshit, people ignore what I consider the part that they should be focused on. It's kind of the smoke and mirrors of the important point. People are focusing on people with autism will never pay taxes, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write poetry, they'll never go on dates, they'll never poop on their own, or something like that, right? People point out the fact that why is the first thing he said taxes? That lets you know what he really thinks of people and da-da-da. And it's obviously offensive because you're basically saying people aren't going to live full lives because they have a condition, a mental difference. Parents of children with autism are offended. People who are friends with people who have or on the spectrum are offended for obvious reasons. But that, I am saying, is a distraction. I will say this, though. It is kind of really showing you how he's never really met anybody with autism. No, I can't even say that because he has. Elon Musk identifies as being on the spectrum. I don't know I don't know. There's actually a show where you can see people doing this. It's like it's ran in multiple countries. The American version is on its third season. I don't know what he's talking about. He can watch a show where people with autism are going on dates and stuff. I don't know what he's talking about. They're paying taxes and everything. But the part that is the distraction part that we should be focusing on is said at the earlier in the speech, because he went on condensing all of this grade A bullshit. He did this for 30 minutes. And what he said kind of towards the beginning of this is he was saying that we need to dismiss the claim that these increased number of cases are due to better diagnoses and broadening the definition. He said, just throw that away, just ignore that. Why? Like, why would he do it? Because, well, once you examine that, his whole statement kind of falls apart. So let's start with this. First of all, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders fifth edition, came out in 2011, the most recent edition. And what it did is it got all of these things, including Asperger's, and it put them all under the umbrella term of autism spectrum disorders. So you have level 1, 2, and 3 based on not severity of autism, because autism isn't thought of as being severe or mild. I know people do that. That's not what's going on. That's why you hear some people with autism make the joke saying that they're spicy brain, because it's not a matter of having severe or mild. It comes down to support needs, and the support needs are based on level 1, 2, and 3. Why is that? Well, high support needs has nothing. Well, high support needs is not the same as saying um, severe, because depending on the context in life. So let's give an example. Let's say that I have a job, or let's put it this way. Let's say that I have an above average IQ. I'm verbal. I have an advanced or even terminal degree, but I'm very, very bad at picking up on social cues. Depending on where I am, that difficulty in picking up social cues may make my life very difficult in certain circumstances, and I may need particular support needs in this particular circumstance. Meanwhile, you can have another individual who has an above average IQ or average IQ, um, has a degree, but is either mute or have what we call or nonverbal, or has selective mutism, and they may have to use an electronic device to communicate. You would say that that person would have probably higher support needs than someone who's verbal. But given the situation, the person who not only can pick up on social cues, but is really like a very I guess very good at picking up on I guess the needs or the feelings or the whatever people, yeah, they may have to communicate using an electronic device, or if they have selective mutism, they may at times feel too overwhelmed to speak. But that is a person who in a lot of social situations, once people accept their different way of communication, can go smoothly. So we've gotten all these definitions of autism, or all these mental differences, and we've put them under this umbrella term of autism. That's the first thing that has increased the number of cases of autism. The other thing that's increased the number of cases of autism is it's gotten better at identifying people at a younger age and identifying different groups. Because traditionally, not just people in general, but we've gotten better at identifying it with people in general, but also specific groups. We realized that they were being underdiagnosed. Different, for example, ethnic racial minorities were being underdiagnosed, and women were being underdiagnosed. There are even women who aren't that old who, when they went to their who would go to counselors, mental health workers, counselors, psychologists. They have the story of their counselor saying, "You can't have autism. You're a woman. You can't have autism. You have friends." A lot of people have that experience. That's what they thought. You can find people's testimonies where they say, "You can't have autism. You have friends." For ethnic and racial minorities, behavior, especially in children, the the same behavior in little white boys was autism, and little black boys or little brown boys, it was behavioral issues. I actually had that when I was younger. I was labeled as having behavioral issues. I just had parents that advocated for me and took up for me. Um, so there you go. So he gets these things and he just says, let's ignore the fact that we've broadened the definition of autism. Let's get the fact that we've gotten better diagnosing it. And then he says that 25% of children who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal. That is, I can tell you right now that's not true. I can tell you right now that's not true. And the reason I can tell you, or let me rephrase that. Let's say that actually that 25% of children diagnosed with autism are nonverbal. I haven't looked that up. But the thing I can tell you that's not true is that 25% of children with autism are not nonverbal, because there's a greater number of children with autism that are not being diagnosed. Not even people, not even children, but adults. You know someone with autism. You have a friend. There's a good chance you have a friend who's autistic. There's a good chance you have a family member that's autistic. If you have a member of your family that has ADHD, there's a greater chance that you have another family member who has autism. There's a chance that that family member who has ADHD is actually on the spectrum, because those are often misdiagnosed, especially in women. What I think RFK is doing with this is he is appealing to a certain group of people. And the group of people he appealing to are predominantly right wingers who have a tendency towards conspiracy. People who believe in chemtrails and the agro businesses and whatever, purposely polluting the country, and they know that they're causing autism, but they want to cover it up. They are purposely polluting the environment. Let's not get that twisted. But is there a link to autism with this? Probably not. If they really cared about autism, or if they really cared about people with autism, what they would do is they wouldn't cut funding to the Department of Education or try to end the Department of Education, because despite what they tell you about the Department of Education, the Department of Education does not set the standards for state education. That's done at the state level. But what the Department of Education does is provide funding for schools that go towards special education. So if they actually cared about that, they wouldn't cut that funding. From second to third grade, I got speech therapy. I didn't have to pay for that. I wonder where that funding came from. If they really cared about people with autism, they would acknowledge that people on the spectrum often have comorbidities, level 1, 2, and 3. These comorbidities consist of, as I've previously mentioned, ADHD. It's estimated that 60 to 80% of individuals with autism have ADHD. When I was going to get my screening, the psychologist actually identified that I had traits of ADHD. She actually was more concerned with that than the symptoms of autism, because she's like, yeah, you have all the signs, yes, but you're well functioning and you cope, but maybe we can do something about that ADHD. Other comorbidities consist of gastrointestinal issues, anxiety, depression, and seizures. So if you cared about people with autism, you wouldn't cut funding for healthcare, you wouldn't cut funding for special education, and you would broaden things such as behavioral therapies, so children and adolescents can learn the basic skills of communicating and functioning in a neurotypical world. So it's all part of the grift. And I also think that RFK just has a certain hubris that people like him tend to have. I call it people who are members of the Lucky Vagina Club. You think you accomplished what you did because of your own merit, and all you did was come out of the right vagina. You were born with the right last name, and you think that you've done all these things on your own. That itself is a much more debilitating disease, in my opinion, than most cases of autism. You will never realize how mediocre you are. You'll never be able to do anything fully on your own. And you will have a sense of entitlement. And from looking at all the other things, you will also have a tendency towards sexually assaulting or harassing women. And you will be insecure being a man, and you will have to pump yourself full of weird hormones, testosterone, or get weird hair plugs.